Ambassador Wisner, we're very happy to, I'm very honored to be with you today, and we thank you for your precious time. We know you are busy on several missions across the world, and we are in particular happy to speak to you just very close to your birthday, as you disclosed to us, and it's very good to meet again with an old friend. So the topic of today is a brief conversation on AUKUS. AUKUS got launched some quarters ago with a bit of turmoil as it succeeded the previous contract between Australia and France. But we believe, even though we speak from France, that this rumor and turmoil has kind of overshadowed the important issues, which is that AUKUS got framed in the context of a very impressive rise indeed of the Chinese Navy and its associated armaments, in a context as well of multiple Sino-Australian tensions. And this all very understandably led the United States and Australia to review their arrangements. Now the initial matter has been settled, and the AUKUS seems to be sailing on its way. So my first question would be for you to kind of give us a first assessment of the AUKUS results, knowing that it's not just a geostrategic alliance, it's more like a technology-based alliance to equip a nation for the underwater activities. So what is your assessment so far on this technological alliance at the light of the geopolitical shifts that happened since the launch of AUKUS, which I need not to restate here?
Joel and Arnab, first of all, let me tell you how pleased, how delighted I am to be with you. The subject is of vital importance. I'm going to give you my answer in a slightly different context, and that is to take a step back and situate AUKUS and what is occurring on a technological and military basis inside a broader political context. If we don't do that, I think we miss the point and we undershoot the target that we're trying to reach. In essence, all of us, particularly the United States, finally came out of a period of hibernation and woke up to the fact that the competition with China is very real, very severe, and will last for very many years. With that in mind, the way to respond to the competition is to respond at a variety of levels, and that has been the purpose of American policy, to attempt to signal to China that yes, it's possible to live in peace, but with respect for the boundaries of permissible behavior. And China has exceeded those in its economic competition, now in its gradual expansion of its military presence, its global footprint. It is all taken together, posed a very real matter of concern to the United States and indeed to Europe. The response, as I say, is multiple, many-fold. First, there is a political response. It takes several forms. Most recently, at the G7, there was a signal of concern from a variety of Western nations, backed up with the Koreans and the Japanese. It takes the form, furthermore, of direct signals to China from NATO, indicating that China is a matter of security concern. Third, it has taken a tangible form, first under the Trump administration and now more recently under Biden's presidency, in the formation and enhancement of the Quad of the United States, India, Japan, and Australia. If you look at all of these together, every step that is being taken is sending a signal to China that we are going to equip ourselves politically, militarily, technologically, commercially to compete with China and see if we can find a modus vivendi somewhere out there. I don't see it yet. So that's where I start with AUKUS. AUKUS is, I'm rusty on the details, but I actually think it started with the Australians being disobliged by the Chinese, reaching out. The British played a role in bringing us and the Australians together. As you know, that ended up with the nuclear arrangement for submarines that will be able to indicate directly to China that Australia has the ability to defend herself and will be fully backed in this regard by the United States and indeed Britain. It came, unfortunately, with a very disruptive effect on France and the relationships between France, Australia, and sotto voce France and the rest of us. I am very pleased that that's been overcome. Why am I pleased? France is an important Asia actor. France is a key player in the China equation. France is an Asian power. So it's vitally important to signal to China that we're all aligned. So I look at AUKUS as a military dimension among other military dimensions, strengthening of American forces in the Pacific, shifting base presences, standing up to China politically, the recent demonstration of concern over the Solomon Islands. All of these are part of a package of indications to China that the West is increasingly unified, concerned by Chinese overreach, and prepared to stand up to it.
Thank you very much, Frank. I have to share something with you. I'm an optimist. I don't know if it's good in geopolitics, but first of all, thank you for your kind words on different powers on this planet. The situation having changed so much, the concerns for, and even though the message that is displayed, as you rightly mentioned, is very clear, the uncertainties have grown considerably, and many observers, many analysts are worried that the Pacific, that South China Sea, that the Strait of Taiwan might follow suit with, or might inspire, the situation there might be inspired by the situation in Russia. So there's a considerable amount of worry on this planet. I don't necessarily belong to those who are worried, but I rather belong to those who believe that there's maybe an opportunity, and AUKUS being again a technological alliance. And as you aptly mentioned, the initial tension between Australia and France got solved. My optimism puts me to envisage scenarios on which, precisely the nuclear dimension of the technological agreement, possibly France, or beyond the nuclear on some other armaments, as you know that Europe is gaining on some strategic autonomy and that France and Germany are getting closer, where one could possibly see a kind of an extension or agreements between the AUKUS and some of the European powers to actually establish the link and translate what you said about different countries from Europe being actual players in the region. So in plain words, do you think that the current evolution of global geopolitics could lead to an option to kind of renew the conversation or the technological cooperation between AUKUS and France, for instance? And maybe the subsequent question with India, as we're having today Arnab Das from India with us. India is a specific nuclear power. Of course, it hasn't signed a non-proliferation treaty that makes it specific, but shares equal concern with the rise of China in those seas.
These are important points. I'm afraid that you and I are of common view that the global situation is extremely troubled. We're at a period of literally of transformation, and we don't know where the overall story is going to end up. Ukraine is only the most recent terrible demonstration of the breakdown of a rough sense of balance in the global order. So I think we're facing a long haul, and that key to it will be trying to find an equilibrium with China. Key to it will be finding ways to signal to China that we could live in peace, but if China wishes to compete without regard to limits, then increasingly China is going to face a common front. India, Europe, Japan, Korea, Australia, France, other Western nations. And this needs give China a reason to pause. And the competition with China will be multifaceted, with each nation participating in its own particular area of expertise or ability. So there will be those who will compete technologically, AUKUS being an example. There will be others who will compete, as the recent G7 indicated, the need to show China that we can match the Belt and Road Initiative with infrastructure development. So you will see multiple geometries, multiple ways in which we indicate to China that we're prepared to cooperate, but only if China respects limits and finds balance itself. Now, I personally don't believe we're going to see a change in a reassessment in Chinese strategy before the Party Congress this fall. And even then, China is on a particular role. But the way to indicate to China that we want balance is to create a counterbalance. And in all the ways that you and I are talking about this morning, we're developing that counterbalance.
Thank you very much, Frank. That's very clear. Peace within limits, multiple fronts that might coalesce into unique fronts, and God forbids we're not going towards an actual front. And on this concept of peace within limits, we need tools. We've discussed those. I would want Commodore Arnab Das to discuss maybe and complement some of the tools, because the AUKUS got framed around nuclear technology within a larger framework, as Ambassador Wisner has explained to us. Arnab, you, Arnab, at the MRC in Pune, India, are developing the concept of UDA. And we're not going to go into the details too much, but the notion of the sounds, notion of silence and sound underwater is of course very much connected to the submarines. Could you explain to us, and maybe through commenting what Ambassador Wisner shared with us, could you explain what India, for instance, for that matter, could share around the AUKUS alliance?
Thank you, Joel, and thank you, Ambassador Wisner, for joining us today. And it's indeed a privilege for us to be sharing our thoughts with you and listening to you. It's remarkable to get your perspective. Very quickly, the underwater domain awareness framework, I mean, when you talk about AUKUS, it is certainly the tie-up between Australia, UK and US is the larger hardware component of it. But the AUKUS, the submarine per se, will be deployed in the Indian Ocean region. And the Indian Ocean is tropical waters. So, and you are aware, tropical waters are very, very different. And there is a lot of understanding required of the local site-specific issues. And that's where I think role of India being a major player in the Indian Ocean will make a lot of difference. Understanding the tropical waters and how to deploy strategic submarines like this in a manner that it will help the deployment more effectively. So we are pursuing this underwater domain awareness framework, and the uniqueness of the UDA framework developed by us is that it is not just the security perspective, it is also the economic and the environmental perspective. Because when we want to look at geostrategic collaboration, it has to be, I mean, the present maritime domain awareness has remained limited to security, and sometimes it faces a bit of resistance because smaller countries will not be able to afford a completely security-led collaboration. So what we are proposing is getting more technology into it, getting more local site-specific research and development, and how to enhance sustainable blue economy while keeping the security dimension also very, very impact. So thank you very much. I think I will not take much time. And I think the UDA framework will be very, very instrumental in actually developing the collaboration that we are looking at, and to get the smaller nations into this. I mean, the entire definition of the Indo-Pacific is the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So getting the tropical dimension is, I think, very important. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Arnab, for conveying the other dimensions. And well, I'm sure this is only the beginning of a conversation across our nations, and it's renewing of a conversation among friends. And I'm sure we'll have other opportunities to discuss this. But maybe a last word for Ambassador Wisner, if you wish to comment and conclude, sir, on what Arnab mentioned about the possibility to expand to other third-party countries, or not third-party countries, but countries which are less populated, less into security developments, more into other technological developments, civilians, and also more concerned with the environment, so to speak, because one way or another, we have to connect the security on the Indo-Pacific to the blue economy and continuity of life in the oceans. I don't know if this is inspiring or too large or topic for next conversation, but Ambassador Wisner, you have the mot de la fin, as they say in France.
That's a great honor and a challenge. First of all, I've enjoyed this conversation enormously, and I'm pleased to look at it in a multi-dimensional way that you all have laid out this morning. The key point all of us need to remember is that we live in a time of very rapid change and of global threat, and that the objective is to reestablish some basis of stability and order in the global system. That can only be done if there is a strong presence of like-minded powers that will stand up and operate together. And that will signal to China that playing by the rules is the right way to proceed. But we have to keep the dialogue with China open. And that dialogue will take in time, if we're successful, many dimensions. It won't just be about arms control, and yes, indeed, China is expanding its nuclear capability. It won't be just about AUKUS and Australian submarines that give Australia defense autonomy. It will take many different forms. But I'd like to think one day, Joel and Arnab, that we will be back in looking for ways to cooperate with China. And I think you put your finger on an area of huge promise, and that's the environment. For we're all affected by the fact of climate change. We are all victims of the mistakes that we've made and are continuing to make. And the only way that climate change can be dealt with is cooperatively, bringing to bear the kinds of scientific insights that Arnab is applying as you look at the impact on oceans. So I would like to leave my word of hope for this discussion, Joel, to say that our long goal, our long distance aim is stability and balance, but we need to get there with dialogue, and climate is going to be a really juicy target in my mind for cooperative development.
Thank you very much, Frank, on those words on like-mindedness, dialogue, and hope for cooperation. That gives us some hint that maybe we are right to be slightly optimistic in this environment. So I thank you very much for your time, Frank. It's been a pleasure seeing you again. Thank you, Arnab, and thank you, Mallory, who's been helping us pilot this
Thank you, Joel.
interview. And thank you to all of you. Have a great day.
Thank you.